Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order tonight's planning board meeting, Wednesday, February 12th, here at the Fuller Meadow School. Please silence your phones if you have them with you. Before we get going on the meeting, I'd like to introduce Cheryl as our new alternate member here of the planning board. She was appointed duly through the planning board and select board meeting last week, so we're happy to have Cheryl back. She was a planning board member with me when I first started, so it's good to get someone with a legal background on the board. She's our only legal advocate person who's on the board on our board. So happy to have her join us. For the purpose of tonight's meeting, we have 3 full members. I'd like to entertain a motion to make Cheryl a voting member for tonight. If anyone would like to make that motion.
I'll make the motion to make Cheryl a voting member for the planning board tonight.
Do we have a second?
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Has everyone had a chance to review our meeting minutes from January 8th, 2025? If so, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as written from January 25.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. First on the agenda, we have 3 ZBA recommendations. The first one is for 223 Maple Street, a modification to a 2024 site plan, approval for an addition. We have heard from legal counsel for the applicant, and we are going to move this to. Next one on our agenda is 2 Stevens Ave. It's a single-family residential interior demolition and renovation with a small addition on a non-conforming lot. I don't believe we have anyone here from the petitioner, but Anna, if you're familiar with it, can you kind of give us a rundown of what they're seeking?
Yeah, so the reason they are coming to the zoning board is because it's a non-conforming lot. As far as I know, the rest of the setbacks are conforming. They are renovating the existing house. The renovations they're going to be pretty much gutting the house and adding a garage. On the site plan, which you all have, you can see kind of where it's placed, as well as some of the additional things on the site. There are currently 2 sheds on the site, and one note that I have is the applicant is working on noting where the driveway is. Currently the driveway is not shown on the plan. They are working on making a note of where that is. In terms of the actual renovations and the building, I don't have any concerns about what they are planning to do.
So it sounds like the addition, for the most part, it looks like they're adding a small 10 by 10 patio in the back with a little deck. Like you mentioned, the addition of the attached garage. No closer, it looks like 2 Stevens Ave, so it doesn't look like it moves any direction that way. Makes it a little bit closer to Haynes Ave. Mm-hmm. But I took a look at the stormwater management plans. It doesn't look like it's too impactful there. They'll obviously have to comply with, there's no issues, it doesn't look like, with adding any bedroom or any bedrooms or bathrooms, so I don't think we have any issues with Title V. And it looks like, are they adding a second floor as well?
They are going up on a portion, yes.
Okay.
It's not a complete second story.
So they will be adding it looks like a bedroom.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up their,
2, 3.
the current septic, and I don't have in front of me here if the current septic is big enough already or if they plan to increase, but I'll certainly,
There's a
yeah, I'll certainly.
Looks like there's a bedroom on the first floor,
Mhm.
and then there's 3 on the second floor.
So as far as our decision-making on it, we're looking at the stormwater management, we're looking at whether or not, it meets community needs, whether it creates any additional traffic or pedestrian or safety issues, any potential, economic or fiscal impact to the town. I'm not seeing any. It does look like it fits within the existing neighborhood character.
They'll need a new the septic 750 gallons, that's probably 2-bedroom. So
Yeah.
they'll have to upgrade to 1,500.
It will. In their application, I'm looking at the application for the special permit, Anna, and it does say the existing utilities and public services, including water, sewer, electric, and waste disposal, are already in place and sufficient to accommodate the proposed renovation. But as Shad mentioned, that it does look like they will probably have to comply and make some modifications as well on the septic. So if anyone would like to make a recommendation, a motion on a recommendation for the ZBA, we can include any type of conditions, such as a study to ensure that the proper size septic
Correct.
is in place. And it does appear that this is to accommodate family, so I don't know whether it's older family, younger family. Kind of irrelevant to me, but do we have anyone here, any abutters here for this proposal? Hearing none. Anna, we didn't receive any feedback, it doesn't look like, from any of the abutters who were all sent the notice regarding the application.
So the notices for these projects recently went out. I haven't heard anything yet.
Oh, so the
But
notice-
those are set for the
For the ZBA?
ZBA
ZBA.
hearing. Yep.
Gotcha, okay.
And I expect that any issues with the septic will also be brought up with the ZBA as well as with our public health director.
Okay. Very good. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I make a motion to, positive recommendation to ZBA to approve 2 Stevens with contingents that they get the approval for septic, if required.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Next, we have 49 South Main Street. This is a modification to the 2024 special permit and site plan approval for adjustments to the parking lot layout and building sizes. Hi.
Hi, Lars Onion with Philbridge Acquisitions. Thank you very much for having me here. Anna's just firing up the documents on, I believe you've received already. But we are going back to the zoning board to request a modification to the site plan approval and one of the special permits. The genesis of this is, as you might recall, with the plans you previously saw, we had a drive-through use for the southern standalone building. That was not something the zoning board was favorable in awarding that special permit. And in order to just sort of bring the permitting process to some closure, we withdrew the request for that special permit, but we did not make any modifications to the site plan last summer, just because knowing there would be likely changes in any case, depending on any future user. Since then, we have been working on leasing the building. We have recently signed a letter of intent with a full-service restaurant operator. And whereas we had thought a restaurant use would want to be on the southern end of the northern the bigger building. They actually expressed a desire to be in that southern building and have sort of their own, control their own domain in a whole way. So we were amenable to that. One of their requirements, they are proposing to do a 180-seat restaurant. And so they need to know that we can provide them with 150 parking spaces so that on like a Saturday evening dinner time, there's enough spaces for people who are coming in and people who are leaving to rotate through without, searching and searching and searching for parking. So the parking would not be exclusive to the restaurant, but is just there to support their operations at their prime sort of dinner time hours. So what we are proposing is to modify the site plan to accomplish a few things. One is to get rid of the drive-through lane so that infrastructure will be gone permanently. The result of that, and I didn't even expect this, but it turned out this way, we're actually increasing the open area slightly. So we're going from 25.5% open area. The requirement is 25% in the zoning. We're going to 26.1%. We're increasing the parking to a total of 153 spaces. The southern building is growing in square footage. I think it was around 4,000 square feet before. It's 4,500 square feet now. And it has also shifted a little bit closer towards South Main Street. And that's to benefit the parking in the back, as well as we thought there was an interesting opportunity architecturally to have the gable roof that's on the end facing sideways kind of frame with the main northern building and kind of create a moment, and I'll highlight that in a moment. In order to accomplish those that parking supply in the back, previously we had requested and received a special permit to reduce the landscape buffer. We were supposed to, between a commercial use and a residential use, we're supposed to maintain a 10-foot landscape buffer. We had requested a special permit to reduce that to 4.5 feet so that we could have a sidewalk to enable pedestrian safe movement around the site and from the adjacent 40B. In order to make the dimensions of standard size parking, so that's 18-foot deep spaces, 24-foot drive aisles, to do a double-loaded parking lot, in order to accommodate that, we would need to request to have the landscape buffer go down from 4.5 feet, which is where we're currently at, tapering from 2.5 feet down to 0 feet. And that's, again, abutting only where the 40B project is, where there is ample landscape area between that sidewalk and that residential building there. And then we have made some other small tweaks here and there. So the buildings, we've grown the square footage of the buildings a little bit. The approval we received last summer allowed us to go up to 20,000 square feet. So we are basically requesting to do that change. The way we're accomplishing that, again, the southern building is growing by about 500 square feet. The northern building is growing about 1,000 square feet, but only backwards. So everything that the public sees is the same design as what was before you last summer. It is just having some of the spaces be a little bit deeper in order to increase the square footage. We're essentially trying to find every way to restore the lost value of the drive-through in trying to accommodate, that outcome. So that's the genesis of the request. And then what we have here in this presentation are just graphics to just show when there's blue labels, that was what was approved last summer. And then the next slide will show in green, the green label is what's proposed. So again, there's a drive-through lane. The building is sort of following the same frontage line. And there's a very large loading area in the back here. And you can see the 4.5-foot landscape buffer running along this property line. If you could advance. Thank you. The proposed plan shows this building. Now you see the frontage of the southern building is a little bit forward of the northern building. The northern building has grown in the back, and so the loading area has been reduced. Still ample for delivery trucks to pull off and do their job. And then the sidewalk now tapers from 2.5 feet to 0. The reason for the tapering is the property lines on the southern edge along Rowell Lane and next to the 40B are a little bit askew from each other. And because the zoning districts also follow that property line, we thought it best to just ask for an amendment to the special permit as opposed to proposing to move the property line, because that would cause all kinds of incoherence with the zoning districts. And so then you have the double-loaded parking area behind the proposed restaurant, and then there would be, so this is, I think it's 90-something spaces, and there's 60 spaces over here around the north. And none of them will be exclusive to any user, but just the proximate convenience of locations. And so then what I did was, there's a series of different ways, but it basically was just showing before and after, so you could just see readily with some tags of, you can see how the back, it's pretty thin back there, and it's much thicker here, and therefore the loading area gets reduced. That's really the only change on the northern portion. And on the southern portion, I tried to mark out where everything moves, the landscape buffer tapering, the increased parking count, and then again, the landscape open area goes from 25.5% to 26.1. And then the other drawings are just, again, comparisons before and after going sideways, just so you can see all of what the public will see from South Main Street, and you can just sort of compare how where there was a bunch of driveway lanes and surface has now become green space, and then how the building has shifted a little bit forward from where it was before. We've also moved the crosswalk. We've done a raised crosswalk so that pedestrians can feel very comfortable crossing over from one building to the other, even if cars are coming in and out. Just trying to be as thoughtful as we could about the full experience here. And this, again, just showing some changes that we had the entrance to the drive-through lane, and now it's just a standard double-loaded parking lot. And then again, that's the proposal, and I can't recall if I have any other stuff. Oh, so these are the renderings, I'm sorry. So then, in terms of the building design, again, the northern building, this longer building, there are no major changes. There are some little nuances, so there's some changes to the window heights. We had previously shown 11-foot windows. Apparently that 1 foot more than 10 feet changes the type of glass and the whole framing and all the stuff, so we've reduced the this is the approved plans, and so you'll see in a moment, this window, the glazing comes down 1 foot. We keep all the dimensions and balance of the spacing. The one big thing that's different is, as I mentioned, the southern building, because it's sort of a 360-degree building, it gets a little bit longer. So here you have the white Bourne and Batten building, and then the sort of background building that's gray. In the new version on the next page, you'll see there's 2 of these moments. I'm sorry, thank you. That's perfect. So you'll see 2, it's a little bit longer, but we're following the exact same architectural language. We haven't changed the design, we've just tried to address the fact that the building is a little bit longer in order to provide the space that the restaurant operator is seeking for their function. I think that's everything in here. Okay, so here's the rendering. So this, I guess, again, if you'll see, this was the previously approved renderings. Again, we had a coffee shop was the thought at that time with the drive-through. And you'll see, just to point this out, you had sort of the side of the healthy juice, these are all mock retailers, but the gable sort of shooting sideways into the other gable element. And now with the new adjustment, there's a little bit more space and relief, so it kind of creates kind of a framed moment to really make it feel a little bit more villagey, because now if you're in the one space, you're looking down and making eye contact with the side of that space. So we tried to be consistent with the original design intent, but still try to create a little bit more of a special moment there to respond to what the restaurant operator was seeking from us.
Very good. Couple of questions I have.
Sure.
On the approved site plan and the proposed amendment, it looks like there have been some gates that may have been added that separate where the 40B residential building is to that parking lot with the 150 spaces for the 150 spaces for the south commercial building. Is that a gate of some sort, or a?
It is a gate, and I'm sorry, yeah, that has to do with just when the rendering was done for the originally approved plan. We didn't have a gate in the rendering, but we did have them in the civil plans. That was a requirement of the fire department, was to have access. They wanted to be able to get to all sides of the apartment building. But for all the traffic engineering purposes, we had to have the two uses have their own separate entrances. So I apologize that it looks like it's new, but it has always been there. The gate's always been there.
Has there been any thought or discussion to having open access and flow between the two, between the 40B and the commercial space?
We did discuss it with the zoning board and the peer reviewers quite a bit. The thought was basically if the intersection improvements were going to happen, then that would make that more possible, but just given the overall operating performance of the intersection, without those improvements is probably would potentially introduce too much damage to operations right now. So I'd say put it on the back burner and depending on what happens with the intersection improvements. But to just introduce it now would be very not good for operations of the intersection as it is. Because it basically would promote cut-through traffic as well as traffic load from one use going out the other, and would trigger all kinds of additional negative consequences to the performance of the intersection.
Okay. Two other points. I noticed that as part of the plan, the trash had moved. We had discussions before about the trash being moved as far away as possible from Rowell Lane.
Yes.
And it looks like that trash has now moved back closer to Rowell Lane.
Yep. Yes. So a couple elements there. We did talk about it, and I have reached out to the folks at Rowell Lane to talk to them about the proposal. That certainly was a topic of discussion. Also with that were concerns around smells, varmints, all of those sorts of issues. In addition to the design, where we end up with the design, we also agreed to an operations and maintenance manual related to trash pickup. And so that frankly is a question that I wanted to talk with them about. This is the ideal location for the trash, and I understand the thought is it'll be a big nasty mess, but again, you've got 90-some cars parking here. It's really the front door to getting to the restaurant for most of its patrons. So we are likewise very much motivated to keep that in as good of a condition as possible. The other issue is because of the volume of parking that's here, we're required to provide 4 ADA parking spaces, which are supposed to be as close to the building they're going to as possible. So putting the trash, for example, on the backside of the building, we'd then have to move ADA spaces further away to accommodate that. So all told, we thought between the O&M plan that we agreed to in terms of the maintenance, the operations of when it's serviced, again, it's still 10 feet off the property line, 30-some feet from the sidewalk, and the landscaping buffer there. And again, we have a shared interest in it not being a nuisance. We thought that that was an acceptable location. We've not yet, and apparently it's not, but that is, that's what we had started with.
Is there anything landscaping-wise that we can do differently behind where that trash is currently shown that differentiates it and potentially makes it less likely for, like you had mentioned, rodents, varmint, or anything kind of
Well,
behind there?
the rodents is really going to be driven by managing cleanliness. They're going to be attracted to spills and all the like. So we have in the O&M document, we have all kinds of obligations around cleaning and maintaining its good state of repair. In terms of screening, the trash is not like dumpsters just sitting out in the open. It is inside of an enclosed gate structure. We could add more landscaping on the backside of the trash enclosure so it's completely removed from view. We were trying to balance, as you'll note, we have sort of a rhythm of bushes and shrubs and then arborvitaes and the bushes and shrubs, which sort of match the tempo of the existing deciduous trees that are on the Rowell Lane side of the fence. So we were just trying to respect that pattern, because if you have the arborvitaes fighting with deciduous trees, they'll fight for sunlight at some point and compete with each other, which is not good. But given the distance, I mean, we could certainly load up this area back here with more arborvitae to create a green wall, but that's visual, it's not gonna address an environment, concern. That's really comes down to managing cleanliness.
Now, this proposed plan, you have somebody already leased, they're gonna it's gonna be in a restaurant.
We have a signed letter of intent, so we've not yet gotten a lease done. I basically need to get this parking provided in order to go to the next step.
Is that trash for the north building and the south building?
No, the trash for the north building is right there. So, again, in terms of just thinking about a shared interest in terms of wanting to make sure these things are managed well, that's right next to a bunch of apartments that are right there. So likewise, we are thoughtful about those impacts as well.
Is this outdoor patio seating the brown part that's on the, I guess, is that considered the east part of the south building?
Yes, yep. Although I would say, based on a design meeting with the restaurant operator earlier this week, I'm not sure that they're gonna actually want to use that.
Okay.
Because since we're on a septic system, if it's an outdoor seasonal seat or it's an indoor permanent seat, you still have to provide full flow as it relates to the septic system. So it sounds like they're leaning towards just having all the seating inside the restaurant.
So what would happen with that, if that's the case? It wouldn't obviously be built that way. Would that just become green space? And-
Exactly, yep.
I'm just wondering, location-wise, I'm just not a fan of where the
Yeah,
where the
which is there,
placement of
yes.
the trash is, for many
Okay.
reasons. I know when, people put their best, foot forward to try to maintain it, whether it's with rodents or smell or noise, emptying those containers, you always see problems, even with their best efforts. So
Yep,
I'm just concerned of the location
yep.
of that.
I will say, so one of our challenges is where would we put it? Especially given our current O&M plan, which says we can't do any pickups before 8 in the morning. And so then if we were to put it somewhere else, the trucks are going head in to service the trash. Any other location, they would end up blocking travel ways. And if we have to wait until after 8 AM, then it's at a time when there's likely patrons using the shopping center for one function or another. So that's been part of what we've been trying to think about.
I do like where you have moved the crosswalk up and raised it. Essentially hoping to get some foot traffic from the north buildings that, end up shopping and then maybe going to dinner at the south
Right.
building. I'm just wondering if there's maybe a way to put almost like a shared southern part of the north building and north building to put it where the outdoor little patio is across the way from where the south building is.
Putting the trash there?
Yeah, like not, almost where that white, right at the corner where that white vehicle is, just north of that.
Yeah.
I guess that'd be challenging as well
Be
from
hard
a
to pick up.
vehicular standpoint, vehicles trying to make the turn. I don't know how many vehicles are gonna be going behind that
Yeah, I
building.
don't know how many will go back here, but I guess the question would be, it would have to be at an angle or something for the truck to
Truck
come
to
in
get
and lift it up.
Right,
And then right now, we have, storefront basically wrapping this back corner. If you might remember, we tried to really make this feel like a very approachable
yeah,
set of buildings from all sides. We really are not treating this like it's the back of the buildings. You really are experiencing the aesthetic, even when you're coming from this back parking lot.
Is there no clearance to put it in the loading dock area? Although it's been reduced, but if it,
I mean, we could put it there, I guess it just, the volume of, they have both trash and recycling, so we would need to, I guess, have it at either end of this and then have the trucks turn in and flip, but then it would be a little odd, because then these tenants would go up there, but this tenant would go there, crossing, we'd have to do another crosswalk and all that stuff to,
I would share it all in one location.
yeah, I'm
Kept
not
the-
sure. I think the restaurant, we want to have them be responsible for all the points of accountability to make sure that they are keeping it clean and operating it. Having shared use opens the door for blame game problems.
Understood.
So if this restaurant went in proposed, it would be an underground grease trap, wouldn't be above ground grease trap?
Correct. Yeah, we have the grease tank there's a series of chambers that we're working
Okay.
on at the Smith, but a grease tank and then septic and then booster pump up to the field. And we're oversizing the grease tank as well, just from what I understand from others, that's a good idea in Middleton.
Yep.
They get rid of the seating area in the front. Is there any way to put ADA parking up front? Is that too close to the entry?
It's too close to the entry, yeah. So we would, when we had the drive-through lane, had to be out only in order to make sure that people were just turning right. If you have the coming in and turning a left, it creates too much conflict. And MassDOT is sensitive to making sure people are getting off the road without too much queuing occurring.
For the parking area, the spaces and the directional arrows, are those gonna be, is that all stamped, or is that, what kind of markings are you putting in?
We weren't, I'm sorry, that was just there just to kind of, for plan purposes, but we weren't planning on indicating anything. Again, it's all standard dimension, parking lot dimensions, so we were just assuming everyone would perceive it's, two-way unless they were told otherwise. We weren't intending to paint markings or anything.
Okay.
We had before, when we were doing the drive-through, just to reinforce where there was one-way behaviors, but in this case, everywhere it's two-way travel ways, two-way travel ways.
And then are you allowing for pull-through parking spots, or are you putting any type of parking barriers in?
We were not planning on doing any barriers, no.
Okay. And the total number of spots you said was 150?
153,
153.
yep. Which is an increase of 38 from what we had before. We had 115 spaces previously.
Mhm. I'm almost wondering if there's a way to take out maybe these 4 spots here. I know you can't see where I'm pointing, but
In the back
towards,
corner, right?
yeah, so towards the back here where you have 4 spots that are close to, it looks like a little landscaping strip. Yep, right there.
Yep.
If there's a way to relocate those 4 spots somewhere, and put the trash enclosure there.
Yeah, I mean, I would need to closer to the Rowell Lane residents, if that's the concern.
That'd be closer, that would be closer to the house that's right there.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
true.
And then I just don't know geometrically if the truck could make the turn to do that. I mean, we would be able to reclaim 2 spaces there, so it's a net reduction of 2 spaces. So I guess in theory, we could do that from a parking supply perspective. I'm just not sure.
Or even
Right here.
that abuts the 40, the part that abuts the 40B. You see the one large tree at the corner there, and then it looks like a truck, a car, an open space, and a white car.
Yeah, so we looked at that, and then, like I said, again, in particular, if we're forbidden from doing servicing until 8 AM, then when the truck is there servicing, then they're blocking off passageway through here for that time.
Well, they're gonna be blocking it off the same way if they're coming around the parking lot and he's pulling straight in there. He's gonna be blocking access there also.
He'll be blocking access here, blocking the main sort of emergency response route that keeps the ability to service around the residential building.
What's the 8 AM requirement?
That's part of the O&M that we agreed to in terms of, as we're trying to address all the concerns related to the trash, and the location, and all the concerns about smells and the like, we put forward an O&M to understand what are the requirements that they place on commercial users in other towns, because Middleton does not have a set of regulations around dumpsters. So we basically self-imposed a series of performance standards following what other towns are doing in terms of cleaning, maintenance, and then we added in the service hours to address the concern about, someone coming at 6 in the morning and, the banging, loud lids or what have you happening. People are trying to do a nice spring morning.
Yeah, I think the OEM plan is important. On the letter of intent with the potential tenant, does the letter of intent discuss any potential operational hours that they plan to be open? Are they breakfast, lunch, dinner, just lunch and dinner?
They haven't expressed, based on their other locations, I think it's more of a lunch and dinner place. I don't know if they do brunch on Sundays, but it doesn't strike me as a breakfast place. It's a nicer type restaurant, consistent with the vision of what we were trying to accomplish when we met with you before.
Yeah, it's definitely challenging on where to locate the trash. And I can see where you mentioned putting it back where that strip is on the west side of it is closer to the dwellings than it is currently.
I know it seems like we're being cheap, but we truly did try to study every scenario and think through all the implications. And
Yeah, I don't think it's a cost thing. I think it's a logistical thing.
Yep.
I would like to see if it does stay where it currently is shown, I'd like to see some additional landscaping behind it at the very least in order to try and create more of a buffer from Raoul Lane.
What about this location in here?
What's that?
Possible relocating up in here and moving some of these spots. So it's not, I know it's probably close to here, but they wouldn't be blocking that entrance, and we suggested that far right corner. but
Kind of where that
further-
arrow is?
Right.
Yeah.
Right there.
So adjacent to where the 40B is, where that arrow currently sits.
Somewhere in the middle, right? I'm just thinking it wouldn't block
Yeah.
the passageway at
Maybe a
8
little bit
a.m.
further to the left, right where the arrow points at the corner of the,
It's on a different photo.
oh, you're on a different one. So if you look at where the gates are on our plan, yep. Just to the right of that, where that little island, I guess, kind of comes out, protrudes out right there.
Yep. Putting it right here in those spaces.
Yep.
Yep.
And then those 3 spaces could move towards
Go
the,
back down where the trash was.
where the
Where the
trash is
trash
currently.
goes, right. But then definitely more landscaping, I think, would be very helpful. And even if you do relocate it, just more
Yeah, so I would just,
scaping around it.
I would need to see if the truck, normally they come head in at sort of a T because of the length of the truck itself, so I'm just not sure if they'd be able to make that swing. But I can certainly have the engineer study that and see if it's possible.
I mean, especially given the time, if it's not a morning, not a breakfast 24/7 kind of place, if they pick up at 9, 10, 11 a.m., the parking lot's probably not going to be all that full.
Yep.
We don't have, it's not a public meeting, public hearing, but feel free. Please state your name and your address.
Yeah, I'm Fred Feldman, I'm the president of the board. at Blue Haven. We spent considerable time. I've attended every single meeting with the zoning board and the planning board coming up to this. Right along Rowell Lane, across from where those dumpsters are, probably the width of this room, there are 3 single-family homes, all of which have children. We have exterminators come on a regular basis because of mice and that sort of thing. It's not a question of, can we move those dumpsters? Those dumpsters have to be relocated. We spent all kinds of time, if I could, having those dumpsters moved to a location somewhere over here, putting a barrier around them so they couldn't be seen. To move them over here is inexcusable. They cannot be here. I mean, if you have to move them here and then move some of this parking to allow the trucks to maneuver, then that has to be done. I mean, we're full-time, year-round residents. I mean, what we're doing here is for the benefit of the residents of Middleton. That's the purpose of what we're here for. It's not to accommodate somebody that's trying to put in a restaurant where people come to have a meal.
I understand
Okay,
your,
and the other thing is, we've spent thousands of dollars to have an engineer to make sure that the drainage works properly. What I'm hearing is it sounds like 20% more parking. The town of Middleton has spent all this money to make sure the drainage works properly, and we've gone through the traffic studies, how many more parking spaces are we increasing here?
It's 38 more spaces.
30 more spaces. What does that do to all the studies that we've done here?
It's better than-
Assuming this does nothing to the study and everything is fine, we're going to move these dumpsters back to where we're going to have rodents, which putting trees to block them is not going to do anything. Those dumpsters cannot stay there. We've got 45 year-round residents here that are paying $500,000 in taxes, and we're saying that it's okay to put those dumpsters there? Absolutely inexcusable to say that that's acceptable.
I understand your concerns. That said, it is zoned commercial. So when you buy a residential property next to something that is zoned commercial, that is vacant and up for sale,
Yeah.
it should be understood that something commercial is likely to go there.
And we work together as a
And
community.
and we definitely are working to try and find the best solution.
Right.
And as you've heard, we have concerns with that trash.
Right,
with-
but
with the
I'm
location as
saying,
well.
if we're working together, I think there are other solutions. I mean, we might have to restructure the way the cars are parked.
Yeah.
That's not set in stone, and I'm hearing what you're saying is, maybe we can move them to the other set, to this side over here, and maybe we have to restructure the way the cars are parked, so that a truck could come in to empty the dumpsters. Maybe that's possible, but maybe the solution is restructuring the way the cars are parked, so that the dumpsters can be over here somewhere, not to leave the dumpsters here, so that the cars can park in this structure. So restructuring the design of the way the cars park is not the problem. The problem is where the dumpsters are. We can always restructure the way the cars park. And if we have to eliminate 4 or 5 cars, then I don't see that as the problem. I see the problem is having the dumpsters abutting the street.
Yep.
Moving the dumpsters, I think, is the solution, not the way the cars are parked. The cars can be moved, the dumpsters have to be moved, from my perspective, because of the rodent issue and everything else that presents the problem.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
From one of the other things you mentioned was a water runoff in a wastewater scenario. I'm actually looking at saying where, regardless of whether they're parking spaces or a drive-through, it looks like there's more green space, more area for runoff, for snow storage. So I think from a water standpoint, a wastewater standpoint, it looks like a slightly better solution than what was there
Yeah,
previously.
and all I'm saying is that, we spent several $1,000s to hire Sparages as an engineer I know they have the peer engineering, but we will, it's a very critical situation.
Absolutely.
And we spent a lot of money to make sure that we weren't going to be impacted, because there have been other developments in Middleton that have gone in. I can think of one where they never had an issue, and then all of a sudden, a subdivision was put across the street from it, and they had water problems. So ours being very critical, we just want to make sure if there's any other changes after something has been approved and peer reviewed, that any change that's done subsequent to that is not going to impact us in a negative way.
Agreed.
And it's not trying to give anybody a hard time, it's just trying to be proactive and make sure that we don't have a subsequent problem after all is said and done.
Agreed.
The dumpster being something that can be changed, that's a small thing. If you have to change the way you orient your parking spaces to move the dumpsters to an appropriate location, that's something that can be done. That's an engineering problem. That's something that the residents shouldn't have to suffer because the engineers aren't doing their job, aren't doing what they need to do.
Was there a
Thank you.
study done for making that parking one-way and having angled parking?
We did not study it. I had, year and a half, 2 years ago, looked at that. I mean, you lose quite a number of spaces when you introduce the angular parking because at the ends. So it's less efficient in terms of the number of parking spaces that are yielded. It can be done, and it could be done within the landscape buffer area, or be able to maintain that 10-foot buffer, but you would lose several spaces. I can't tell you off the top of my head exactly how many there would be. It would also complicate things from an emergency response perspective, because they would have the potential of, if they're responding to something, going in the direction counter to a one-way flow of traffic.
One question.
We've had to do swept path analysis if they were coming in from Boston Street or if they were coming in from South Main, so that they could be comfortable, they could respond from any place at any time.
One question I have is on the north part of the parking where we had talked about as you first enter that south lot, you see the truck and the 3 vehicles and the 4 spaces. It looks like there's a blocked off shaded area just south of where I see on the proposed residential building for 40B trash recycling. Is there some type of opening, or what's the reason for that shaded area
Yeah,
there?
so that's basically the pickup location. So what we have is trash chutes inside of the residential building, so that all the trash is kept contained inside of the building. They go into 2-yard totes. Those totes then get wheeled out for the trash company to pick those up. So they're not commercial grade dumpsters. They are little small things that they just sort of lift in the back, almost similar to residential trash pickup, but they're 2 yards in size as opposed to half or 1 yard.
So is there an easement then between the
Yeah,
40B?
there's going to be a series of easements we're going to need to do. Parking, access, drainage, utilities, there's all kinds of cross easements that we're going to need to establish.
So is there potential to put the dumpster there where that shaded area is, or just slightly to the left or to the right of it? I know then we're looking at taking away some more parking spaces there, but,
Yeah, I mean, again, same answer as before. I mean, it is potentially possible. The only issue is there's 2 issues. One is just the geometry, the turning movements of the trash truck, and whether that impacts more than just the spaces that they occupy. The other part is, this is the area where you're kind of going from, roughly speaking, it's like plus 8 feet to 0 feet. So this is where the pitch is, and this area is also flat, which is another aspect in terms of the truck lifting a trash can up, is having a relatively level place that they're doing it. I just don't know off the top of my head where we are. I mean, obviously it's ADA level pitch, so it can't be any more than, I think it's 5%, but I just don't know off the top of my head what the current pitch is there.
I mean, even if you eliminated those 5 spaces to the right of that, that's a whole lot of area that you could potentially, since there's already an easement there for the residential to unload trash into the commercial space, seems like an opportunity there potentially to relocate the trash there.
Yeah. So I guess then it would be sort of a question of
Yep.
understanding they're the Rowell Lane residents, then there's also 60 units of residents here, and proximity, if that's the concern, then that's really close. That's like 12 feet away, as opposed to, whatever, the setback plus the buffer plus the road plus the yards.
Yeah, but there's already an easement there, so it's, if the residential wants to be able to use and unload trash in the commercial space, they're already sure, some type of agreement, I would think, between the commercial tenant and their parking spaces. Do we know what times and dates that trash from the residential building will be picked up and moved out into that south lot?
I don't know.
So, something to consider that potentially could be a condition on a recommendation if anyone would like to make one.
I'll make a motion with conditions to that.
For a positive or negative recommendation?
To have the dumpsters moved up here. if
Condition
possible.
up on the, okay.
Yep.
So Cheryl's making a motion for a positive recommendation with a condition that the trash be re-engineered potentially to that location near the proposed residential building. Does anyone like to second that?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Discuss communities regarding MBTA community designation. So we have drafted a letter, potentially to go out to the EOHLC, and everyone has seen a copy of this letter. There have since been some edits and some notes based on additional research that's been done by both Anna, Justin, several other people who have, the select board also took a look at it and is sending their own letter, which is very similar. So for full public disclosure, because this letter is not public, or has not been made public, I will read the letter as it was first drafted. When we get to a section where there is a note or a comment, a potential edit or omission or addition, we'll read that, and we can, as a board, collectively decide to either include that edit or not. So it starts off with, to whom it may concern at the EOHLC. First edit, maybe we potentially direct it to Secretary Augustus and Director of the Community Planning for the EOHLC. Anyone have any thoughts, or anyone in favor of that or not in favor of it?
Favor of that.
Okay. Sounds like that's an edit we want to go forward with.
Yep.
On behalf of the town of Middleton, the planning board wishes for the state, and we want to clarify that it's not necessarily the state. We had talked at our joint meeting with the select board that in order to be removed as an MBTA community, which we were added to in the 90s, it takes legislative action. So it would have to be an amendment to the actual MBTA communities law. Chances of that happening are very slim. So what we want to identify is that while that's certainly a course that we could take, it will take a lengthy amount of time for it to potentially come to fruition. What we want to do is, instead of saying state, address it to specifically the EOHLC, and say as it relates to the 3A law, knowing that we'd still be part of the MBTA communities. However, as it relates to that specific law on Mass General Law 40A, 3A, that we be removed for their requirements. So it would read, on behalf of the town of Middleton, the planning board wishes for the EOHLC to reconsider our designation as an adjacent community as it relates to Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 3A. Does everyone agree that it's better to say EOHLC rather than state?
Agree.
Agree.
Okay. The next part of the letter kind of gives some overview to the EOHLC, who they're tracking 177 communities. They're not necessarily intimately familiar with Middleton. So I wanted to give some background there, where we say, our town voted against bylaw articles twice related to compliance with 3A zoning. An annual town meeting on May 14th, 2024 resulted in a 161 no to 101 yes vote. Subsequently, a citizen's petition prompted a second vote during a December 13th, 2024 special town meeting. The motion to adopt an MBTA zoning bylaw once again failed, with the margin growing from 315 not in favor to 230 yes. On both occasions, an overwhelming number of citizens argued a 50-acre and 750-unit requirement was not appropriate for our small town. Anna did some research, and stepping away from the letter, Anna did some research and found that we are on the very, very high end of the density requirements for the town. There were only 4 adjacent communities that were over 20%, calculated at over 20%. Middleton was 22%. The average was 12%. So what we are looking to potentially add that was not in the original letter is the suggested text. The disproportionate capacity requirements for Middleton have been a significant barrier to compliance. Under Middleton's current designation, the MBTA zoning unit capacity required is 22% of our total housing units. This is nearly double the average of the 12% for adjacent communities. Middleton is one of only 4 adjacent communities whose required unit capacity exceeds 20% of total housing units. Does anyone have any thought on whether we should include that in the letter?
I think it should be included.
I think it,
Definitely.
I agree.
Gives clarity.
Yep, and I think it, identifies that Middleton is unique compared to many of the other towns. That data is irrelevant if we get what we want, which we are starting to request in the next line, where we say, it seems within reason that Middleton is likened to Bolton or Hudson, Mass, both of which aren't designated as MBTA communities. Like those towns, Middleton does not directly border either rapid transit or commuter rail communities. I had in there that it appears Northbridge is the only other town with that distinction, and that was based off the map that we were looking to send. Anna did some research and determined that there may be a mismapping from the EOHLC there as well. That Grafton actually has a commuter rail station, but is not designated a commuter rail community on the map.
Do we have any data on how far MBTA,
We do, and
mile-wise?
I think we went over that at the select board meeting. I think it was like 8 miles to the nearest commuter rail station.
8.5 miles.
8.5 miles, and that's going to be in
Wakefield.
the letter that's being sent by the select board.
I'm wondering if we should add that in this section.
We could certainly do that. And I think one of the things that we had talked about before was also making mention and referencing the select board letter, so that, they're feeling, the EOHLC is seeing that this is multiple pressure points that are being hit from planning board, select board. So I don't think we need to mention Northbridge. I think the thought is that we omit that sentence where it says, it appears Northbridge is the only other town with this distinction. And that we maybe include that, something along the lines of,
The nearest MBTA.
the nearest MBA, the nearest commuter rail station
8
is
plus
X
miles,
X amount of miles to X station.
right.
Additional detail can be found in the corresponding Middleton Select Board letter.
Agree.
Okay. Similarly, and in accordance with the SJC verdict, Middleton does not, in quotes, this is from the Supreme Court Justice verdict, Middleton does not, in quotes, benefit from MBTA services directly or indirectly. March 12th marks the next meeting of the Planning Board. We would welcome a member of the EOHLC to join us, and then I was going to put in person or virtually. I don't want them to feel like they have to show up to a bunch of pitchforks and angry townspeople. So I want to let them know that it's obviously okay to join us virtually if we just want to open the door for conversation with the state, on our designation as an MBTA community.
I agree.
Is that enough time?
Oh, go ahead.
I was just say, is that enough time?
I hope so. They're going to get the letter I think the plan was for the select board to send their letter tomorrow, and ours would follow shortly thereafter, probably either early next week, which gives them several weeks to get back to us.
Okay.
Kindly confirm any interest to me or our town planner, Anna, with her email, so we may include this on our agenda. We look forward to your response, respectfully submitted, and instead of just me signing it, if everyone agrees that this letter is appropriate to send, and we vote to send it, it may be a little stronger if all members of the board sign it, that vote on it.
I'm happy with that. Could I just make one more suggestion for
Yeah.
the in-person or virtually?
Yes.
If we could add, so I'm assuming the town has a Zoom link.
Mm-hmm.
If we could add the Zoom link within the letter,
Yeah.
the password, the call-in number and password, just so they have it.
Can we set up that Zoom in advance?
I can set it up. I was thinking through this a bit and wondering whether we go ahead with the approach to invite them to the meeting or whether we leave it as an open-ended. Like, I think our asks are very clear and spelled out, and so the ball is clearly in their court to respond. I am fine leaving the invite to a meeting. I do feel it's a bit unlikely. They have a lot of communities that they are working with, and so from that perspective, I'm not sure whether it,
Gives them the opportunity to just respond to us in writing rather than,
yeah, with also, if truly they are going to consider the things that we are requesting, definitely, I think a month turnaround, they won't have an answer for us at that meeting. And so I feel like it might be more likely they would give a written response than show up at a meeting with no response
okay.
at that time.
And maybe we don't even say March 12th, we would just say, maybe we take out that whole part and just say, we would welcome the opportunity for the EOHLC to discuss in more detail at a future planning board meeting,
That works for them.
or we look forward to your response to our letter.
My only thought is if we were going to have in-person or virtually,
Yeah.
then give them the link.
Give them the link so that they can
they
stay.
can't say, well, we didn't have a link and we didn't know how to get on,
Yep,
but
I agree. Yeah, I think if we can clarify that and say, we'd love to have you join us at any future planning board meeting. Here's the link. Alternatively, we look forward to your feedback or response to our letter. If there are no other comments or questions on the letter, I will entertain a motion to send this to the EOHLC as edited per our discussions.
second that.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Will you send out the latest version to us before you send it?
Yeah, I think,
Okay.
Anna, do you want me to do that, or do you want to,
I'm happy to send that.
if you want to send it, and then we'll all sign it, we'll all
Sure.
plan to come by at some point and sign it before it goes out?
Yep.
Can I say something then, Lee? I want to thank you, Paul, for taking into consideration that trash thing issue.
Absolutely. It
All
was-
right? We really appreciate it. You look for solutions, you try to serve the contractor and the community. So we appreciate your help.
It's incumbent on them, I think, like you mentioned, to find a solution that's adequate, to engineer a solution that's adequate. There's a lot of space back there where they can try and manipulate the parking or move the parking.
Because this issue had been beaten to death.
Yeah.
To come to that conclusion.
I remember.
Now, to satisfy the owner who wants 4 more parking spaces, it's back to space 1 for us as a community.
Yeah.
But thank you very much.
Of course.
Thank you.
Appreciate the support.
Thanks for
Absolutely.
coming.
Yeah. yeah. It's the whole community, it's not we here representing
Exactly.
them, but it's
We're all
very
neighbors.
frustrating.
We're all neighbors.
Yeah, thank you. So now he has to go back and try and redesign it, hopefully.
Yeah, that was the,
Want to keep Middleton small.
yeah. Hopefully, when he goes in front of the ZBA, he'll have, an alternative spot to,
Let's hope. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Of course, have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
yeah, so if Andy, you want to send out an updated finalized letter. We'll come by, well, make plans to come by at some point this week or early next to sign it before it goes out. Is everyone around? You're not here?
No.
Where are you going?
Sunshine State.
Jealous.
I could,
We'll figure it out.
yeah, I could do a PDF
DocuSign?
or a, yeah, or a DocuSign.
yeah.
Yeah, so you could add a, that might
Because
be
if you
easier
don't
for
have
everyone,
DocuSign,
actually.
I have a
I do too.
DocuSign, so
Okay,
we could do it digitally. Digital signatures are fine.
yeah.
All right. Next on the agenda, review FEMA updated flood insurance rate map, discuss implications for zoning bylaw.
I'm just gonna turn this screen back.
Excuse me.
You all have this in your packet, but I figured I'd put it up on the screen. Although I'm not sure if anyone can see it from there. But just a little bit of background on this. I think I mentioned in January that this past year, at the end of 2024, FEMA updated their flood insurance rate map. And along with that, a few requested changes to floodplain overlay districts. So Middleton participates in the National Flood Insurance Program through FEMA, and basically under that program, we have access, our residents have access to flood insurance, and we also have a commitment to keep up with the mandates and regulations that go along with that. And so there are some changes coming up this year with the new flood insurance rate map. And so the changes that we have shown here are coming directly from, so the way that the program operates is it's a federal program, but it's run through the state. So we have a coordinator that we work with at the state. Specifically, our conservation agent works directly with them, and so she has been working with them on the specific updates to our bylaw that we, like, that this change will require. So right now, we've shown in track changes exactly what changes would be requested. This is the draft, and I would anticipate there might be minor things here and there from this, but I think this would be basically the bulk of the changes. I'm not expecting to see like a whole new section added from this draft or a whole new section taken away, things like that. And so where we're at today is I want to just walk through some of the changes just to give you all an idea. And then this meeting, assuming that you all decide that this does require an amendment to our bylaw, you would go forward to go ahead and submit the amendment to the select board. At that point, the select board would refer the amendment back to you all to hold a public hearing on it. And so this is the beginning of the conversation. The point of bringing it to you all tonight is so that you can look over it, ask any questions that either you have or that you anticipate people might have as we go through the process, so we can be prepared during the public hearing for questions that might come up.
And to confirm, the new flood map is not in effect until July 8th, 2025? Is that?
That is correct.
Can I ask a question on to 8.1.2? The very last sentence in that paragraph was by itself, where the town of Middleton hereby designates the town administrator. Is that something you added in or that you want to adopt in?
Yes, that would be an addition. Right now, our floodplain bylaw does not identify a floodplain administrator.
My only comment would, or recommendation would be to have the town administrator and or his designees. This way, it doesn't limit just the town administrator. For whatever reason he was unavailable, he could assign to whoever he wanted. It just gives him more authority.
It's a great idea.
Yeah, so just kind of walking through the changes. There would be a purpose added, that's 8.1.1 up there at the top. The permitted uses stay the same. There's text to kind of introduce them, but we aren't adding any uses. The permitting process, we haven't specifically called this out in our bylaw, but this is the way that it currently operates. So folks who have property in the floodplain overlay district are required to get permit for any work that they do there. There are, I don't have the number right off, but it is a relatively small number of parcels actually in our floodplain overlay district. And I did want to pull up the map for you all to see. Let's see if this loads quickly.
Permitted
I'll just put it in.
uses, the Massachusetts State Building Code. Do you think that it would be relevant to add the energy code, like all the other, have in there all the other, not just the Massachusetts State Building Code, but reference the other codes, if they were relevant, like the energy code,
Yeah.
all the other codes, books that, and I know that were just revised, or elaborate more than just the Massachusetts Building Code. 'Cause
Yeah,
I think
so
that's just specific to that building code book.
Wonder why permitted uses are allowed, provided they meet the following requirements as well as those of Massachusetts, yeah,
Like,
Massachusetts
add, like,
code.
fire code,
general, yeah.
OSHA, like all, just.
More of a general term than just building code. that
Exactly.
Covers and encompasses.
So the comment there is to include the other relevant codes in addition to the building code.
Yep.
Maybe you
Or
could
just
state
a
it that
ger-
way,
Yep.
all relevant Massachusetts.
Yeah, all
code.
relevant Massachusetts codes.
All right. So going down here to the permitting again, that it spells out the process, but it doesn't make significant changes to our current process. They just weren't spelled out as specifically in our bylaw. Oh, the other thing I wanted to note here, I think it's up at the top, but one of the changes that folks might notice is that the notation has changed from the 100-year flood to the 1% chance base flood, and that is they're an equivalent calculation. They've just changed the notation so that it's a little bit clearer that it can happen more than once every 100 years.
100 years,
Yeah.
yep.
But it's a 1% annual, 1% chance it would happen in a year.
Whenever they want to engineer the storm to come up this way, right?
All right, and then there is an additional section added around the storage of recreational vehicles. So if it's a boat or another kind of vehicle that's on the site, that would need to be stored in a particular way.
The recreational vehicles, I'm assuming in our bylaws or ordinances here, do we have a definition of recreational vehicles in?
I believe there is a definition down at the bottom of this one. And if not, we should add one.
Wouldn't those requirements be part of the NFIP? Do we need to state it again? I don't know.
I'm just thinking if someone reads this, they're gonna, just
Yeah,
say
they-
they have somewhere to go to, what defines.
There is one, it looks like on page 7 of 9, recreational vehicle, a vehicle which is built on a single chassis, 400 square feet or less, measured at the largest horizontal projections, designed to be self-propelled or permanently towable by a light-duty truck. So we do define recreational
Perfect.
vehicle there.
All right, so moving along, there are a couple changes, or specifications, I should say, to the reporting requirements. Again, these come down to us from FEMA and are managed through the state by our National Flood Insurance National Flood Insurance Program State Coordinator. All right, and then the last thing that I wanted to draw attention to was the definition section. Definitions, again, are intentionally consistent across all floodplain overlay district bylaws. And so bringing ours in line with the FEMA regulations and with other bylaws, these additions are, that's the point of these additions.
I've mentioned to Anna before, I think it'll be helpful for us to get to know which parcels were not in the floodplain prior, that were in Zone X, that are moving into Zone A or Zone AE, because they may not have, well, they likely don't have flood insurance currently, and may be surprised when they go to either refinance or sell the home that a buyer now is going to be required to carry flood insurance, or if they want to refinance, that a lender is going to force them to
Yep.
purchase flood insurance. If they are notified early enough and purchase a policy before July 8th, is it July 8th? Keep thinking July 6th, but that's my birthday, so,
Happy birthday.
thanks.
In case you forget.
July 8th, I think it was. But if they purchase the policy before July 8th, you know, for someone who is planning to refinance or is planning to sell, they can get a policy that is rated in flood zone X, and then that policy through FEMA is transferable to a buyer. Also, for full disclosure, just so that nobody thinks that there are any personal gains here, I don't write a single flood policy in the town of Middleton. I don't plan to, so
Nice. Good.
I don't believe there's any conflict of interest for me to weigh in on it.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Zone AE and the definitions is referencing the 100-year floodplain.
I was just going to say that I noticed it in a couple of spots.
Thank you.
Yeah, and there may be other spots, so.
Yep. Are you, right here, right? Did you see that one?
No, I didn't see it.
100-year floodplain. I don't see a page number on these, but here, and then I saw it again down here. See it.
We
so-
absolutely,
right
as
there.
I was mentioning,
Right
this
here.
is the beginning of our.
8161?
Right there.
Yep, and then it's right here, where it says Zone A, right above from where you are, as well.
So the
Alright.
new-
Yeah, there's definitely a couple. So there's another one on
Underneath the new construction?
816. What's that?
Underneath the new construction, there's one there too.
8.1.6 flood requirements, and then it says on part one, all encroachments, ... shall not result in any increase in flood levels during the occurrence of the 100-year flood. That is on top of page 3 of 9. Very last sentence in 1.
Oh, here it is. Thank you.
Yeah, there's one on page 7 also.
I'll definitely go through and revise. This is our first draft, so we'll be running this through internal reviews and through our town council, especially for consistency. I would say, though, please feel free in the next few weeks, if you go back to this and see something that, like, we wouldn't catch like that, if there's something substantial that you're noticing, please let me know, because I am hoping that when we bring this to the public hearing, that it's a final draft and it's ready to go to town meeting.
I'll try to get you the language that I used when I used to send out orders referencing all codes without citing all the codes.
Okay.
There's like a language that I have, I'll try to get for that section.
Great.
So you're thinking we'll review this again in March and then maybe have a public hearing in April for it?
So ideally, I'd like to have the public hearing in March.
Okay, that way it can go on the warrant for
Yeah.
spring.
Yes, as well as if we if we needed to continue it for any reason, that we would still have the April meeting.
Okay.
And still be able to get it on the, like, still be able to get the draft approved and get it out to folks to review with the warrant.
Yeah.
So ideally, yeah, we would have the first public hearing in March, and if we're all good at that point, we're good, and if we need to continue, we have time.
Perfect. Yeah, one less thing that Jackie and Justin have to worry about cramming in last minute into the warrant. I know they're always concerned about the time to print and get it out and
Yeah,
everything like that.
absolutely.
Do you want me to make the comments in the document itself? Do you want me to just email you separately?
Why don't you email them?
What is your email?
I can email it to you. How
Thank
about
you.
that?
I love it. I love it. It's easy to respond, so I'm not writing down the wrong letter or number.
Yep. Actually, if you make them in the draft on the one that's on the Google Drive, that's fine.
Are you sure?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, because I'll use that
It'll
one
track
for
it.
our, yeah, for our tracking.
I always forget her name. I'm sorry, I forget your first name. Not, I know Anna. What is your first name? Amy. Did I ask you the last time I was here, do you take in meeting minutes? Do you guys use Otter AI?
I've used it before.
Have you?
Yeah.
I started using it for all my meetings. I swear, I feel like I hit the lottery. It's the best thing ever. Not that I want to take you out of a job, I don't. But it's really nice because it transcribes them and then it gives you meeting minutes summary
Oh, nice.
on key points, action items. It's really good. It logs right onto the Zoom.
Oh, nice.
It's very good.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I do it for all my meetings, everything, planning board, CBA, clerk, everything they have.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
We're all getting replaced by robots.
Yes,
someday,
okay, it's just coming.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's a good start on the FEMA flood maps. I think we've got a good roadmap to get that in time for the spring.
So Anthony, if the board would like to, I would recommend voting to recommend an amendment, recommend that the select board consider an amendment.
Okay. I will entertain a motion for us to recommend that the select board include zoning amendment. Take up zoning amendment for this meeting.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Review consultant evaluation criteria for upcoming projects.
Okay, so just jumping over a bit, we kicked off our bylaw review, comprehensive bylaw review process in January. As part of that, we're hoping to bring on a consultant to help with the overall review as well as drafting text for the new bylaws, any revisions. So I have put together a request for proposals. It includes some evaluation criteria. The general process we like to follow for this is we put out the request for proposals. The first line of review is with town staff to review the proposals according to the evaluation criteria we'll go over tonight. And then after that review, we select usually the two highest scoring respondents for an interview with the boards. We plan for this particular project to do a joint interview with the ZBA and the select board. Project kind of runs with both boards. And so I just wanted to run the evaluation criteria before you all tonight to make sure that there's nothing else you would add or anything else that you feel might be unnecessary. So the whole text of the RFQ is here in the packet, a very brief summary of the qualifications that I'm asking for. I put it kind of in a separate document just to summarize for everyone. And so this is how basically I would evaluate the proposals when they come back, is that they include all the required material and they provide a clear and comprehensive approach to completing the tasks in the scope of work. So pretty much they've read and responded to what we're looking for. They have a comprehensive knowledge of Mass General Law. The best-case scenario would be more than 10 years of experience with mass municipal law and application, a comprehensive understanding of zoning bylaws in municipalities, so 3 or more prior zoning review projects, extensive knowledge of zoning and development considerations for small to mid-sized towns, and to kind of get a criteria for this, basically 3 or more projects in towns in a similar place as Middleton, so similar population kind of thing. Again, these are, like, we would rate them on these, not necessarily, everyone wouldn't have to meet all of these. It would be the highest score of each of them. And then the last criteria would be that they have brought to the proposal a clear and comprehensive approach to stakeholder outreach. That will be a key part of this project. And I would expect them to include a sample stakeholder engagement plan. And I would also, I'm asking for a sample presentation slides to talk to their ability to present technical information. The bylaws are very technical, and bringing them to public meetings is tricky sometimes.
Would they be, excuse me, so are we going to be asking them to present this at a potential town meeting? If we're going with a comprehensive zoning bylaw change, is that the expectation, or are we, the planning board and CBA and others, presenting on it?
The expectation is they would probably prepare materials for our public hearings, and then they would kind of let go when we get to town meeting. And the planning board, as well as me, Justin, would be responsible for presenting the changes at town meeting.
Okay, I'm good with that. I think one of the major points in this one, especially, and you kind of highlighted it here, was community outreach. Looking for someone who's actually going to want to learn and understand what the goals in the community wants, not necessarily someone who's going to look and say, hey, this is the state's agenda as far as zoning, and we want to try and push that into your bylaws. Not saying that we saw that with the MBTA bylaw, but I think it was pretty clear from the get-go that we were not someone who was looking to zone something that was going to be necessarily buildable or developable. So similarly, I want to make sure that whoever we end up picking, has Middleton's best interests in mind, not necessarily what the state's best interests are. Sometimes those two things can certainly conflict. But I love the scorecard that you have down below with, the rating, excellent, good, minimal, no experience, and the categories that we're grading them on there.
In terms of timing, I'm hoping to get this out by the end of February. Review proposals probably early April, and depending on how quickly I get it out, we may have someone for an interview at the April meeting or at the May meeting.
So it shows at the end, we're going to recommend the 2 highest scoring consultants come in for the interview with us and the ZBA. Is that going to be a joint meeting for us?
My ideal scenario would be a joint meeting on a date of the planning board meeting.
And if we have more than 2, can we potentially bring in more than 2 for an interview? If we have more than 2 that are similar in score, that we believe to be similar.
Yeah. I wouldn't recommend probably bringing in more than 3.
Yeah.
But I think if there's 3 that are all really high scoring, and we definitely hear from all of them.
Okay. Yeah, I think this looks good. I'll entertain a motion to approve Anna sending the RFQ out and start soliciting bids from zoning consultants.
I'll make a motion for Inez to send this out for quotes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Items not reasonably anticipated 48 hours in advance. I have nothing. All right. Meeting is adjourned.